situation, victims, aggressors, and all of the language that you see in your packets, that everybody understands it in the same terms. Intervening in in-school bullying also has changed. There are certain things that we need to do. We're obligated to do by this legislation, and we need to do it swiftly, and we need to do it with people who have been trained to do so. And I can tell you today that we have a group of 25 investigators within the schools that I just yesterday, actually, completed the training with them. So we are moving along with being prepared to be able to follow the law around the different pieces that we're obligated to do within school. And finally, educating students around cyberbullying particularly, but all bullying in general. And General Teller is continuing to work on looking at the curriculum for bullying, which is one of the obligations in the plan, and she will be working along with the instructional leadership team to look at the existing curriculum and how to embed the new curriculum through MARC and other places into our own curriculum. Please stop me if there are any questions, I think. Essential to the understanding of the definition of bullying, two of the very key elements have to do with the imbalance of power and the repetition of behavior. Student conflict does not necessarily, and probably does not, include an imbalance of power. Now, imbalance of power when you are a junior high student versus a high school senior, for example, may look very different. Imbalance of power between a group of 13 or 14-year-old girls who have their phones, which we want to call, no one would call them phones. We need to call them computers because they are computers. So when kids have their smartphones in their hand and there's a girl receiving 30 or 50 messages at one time, there's an imbalance of power. So the imbalance of power, that concept is very different under very different circumstances, but it is clearly a very, very key component of bullying as it's defined. Repetition of behavior is that there are multiple times that a person is experiencing this kind of behavior. That it isn't necessarily one time when somebody decides to be mean to another person and it falls into the definition of bullying by the legislation. I've talked about bullying and student conflict and the differences between those. Extremely important for people to understand, and this message will be sent out there over and over again, is that the role of the bystander in bullying is critically important. Bullying would go way down in percentages, if we could help bystanders to be able to understand that their role is critical. For them to walk away, for them to say, I'm done with this, I'm going somewhere else, I'm not supporting you. The bystander is the person who can make the difference in having this end. And we need to work with the bystander to make sure that they're responding to that. And that's going to be a very big challenge for us, for all of us, a whole community. The profile of the bully is not necessarily the big and ugly and unliked person anymore. When we talked about the change in the face of the bully, when I was in school, it was the biggest kid with the meanest grip and all of those things. That is not the case, and we need to educate ourselves about that. And an important element to understand bullying today is that incidents of bullying are often not reported. They simply do not get reported. And we'll show you some of the information we have about that.
Can you go back to the role of the bystander for a second?
Yes.
Are you suggesting...
Can you make it a long question so I can take a drink?
Are you suggesting that a third party has a responsibility, has an obligation to intervene when he or she observes bullying and accepts the risk and liability of doing so?
Yes. They do, and we have a responsibility to help.
It could be another student.
Absolutely. It is most likely another group of students. And if that group of students walks away and says to the bully, we're done with you, there's no purpose for the bully any longer, because the audience has gone away.
Oh, I was suggesting the opposite. I understand what your point is. If the audience disappears, perhaps the drive to be the bully disappears.
Right, the GD ratings go down.
But how about if multiple people are bullying a single individual and a third party walks by? You would like to think that good Samaritan, that bystander, would intervene. But if we're going to say to people, it's your responsibility, it's your obligation to do that, there are inherent risks and liabilities associated with doing so.
There absolutely are inherent risks and liabilities. There is also an obligation to us, and in the bullying investigation training that I've been doing over the last week and a half, that is one of the things that we talk about, because part of the interview process is to make sure that you're checking in with the bystanders to feel if they do feel safe. Some kids will come forward and say, you know what, I'm afraid of this person, but I got to tell you, this is what's going on. And believe me, I'm going to finish that comment and I want to make another comment, but that is critical for us. We're required to make sure that we at least make an attempt to do what we need to for that bystander to feel safe, in the very same way that we need to make the victim feel safe, as best we can. As best we can.
Just to piggyback on what Jeff brought up, I do believe that the bystander has an obligation, and as part of our training and work with students, would be about having bystanders say that what the person is doing is wrong and that they do not support it. And that if enough people stand up to a bully, that it also will go away, besides just leaving the situation.
Right. The other word that I haven't talked about yet is retaliation, because as you'll see in your plan, we've addressed retaliation. Retaliation being the aggressor, or the bully, as we've called them in the past. The aggressor needs to be warned, and all 25 people who I've gone through the training with have been told that the aggressor needs to be told in the interview that there are legal ramifications of them going after either the victim or the bystanders once they walk out of that room. But there is a law that's very clear that this could turn into a criminal charge should they do the wrong thing and walk out of that room and do anything other than go back to the class. And that is where the mushrooming of bullying often happens, that the bully or the aggressor becomes empowered, and then they start to spread that fear among other students. So between safety plans for those bystanders and victims, as well as being educating the aggressors of the impact of the bullying law, are very, very critical pieces of what we need to be able to do.
Are the actions of the bystander in any intervention that they might take protected as a result of the appearance or the judgment that bullying is taking place? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I don't, and I was replaying it. Tell me again, I'm sorry.
Well, you perceive, let's say you're a senior, okay, and you see some sophomores bullying another sophomore, and you intervene. And you, in order to be successful in that intervention, you make the judgment that you're going to have to physically intervene. Someone gets hurt. Are you in any way protected by the fact that you made a judgment, you saw bullying, you felt a responsibility to intervene, and as a result of intervening, someone got hurt?
So we would leave bullying aside when we look at discipline. And I think the question is, would that child be held to the same standard as other children around discipline, such as physical assault, when the physical assault was a result of them trying to protect somebody in a wrong situation. And I think that really goes to the judgment of the principal looking at all the because it may very well be that it truly was, I mean, this is why we have to be careful about it, it may very well be that it truly was somebody being an absolutely good bystander. It may also be that there was a vendetta or some other sort of the kind. So it really does need to be...
It was an opportunity.
That's right. Okay. Okay. I mentioned the incidents that are not often reported. I'm going to show you a slide about that. And incidentally, some of these beautiful slides are through Mass Aggression Reduction Center, who we have partnered with and had their permission to be able to do this. So as I said, the imbalance of power between the target and the aggressor is a critical piece for us, as is the repetition of an event as a characteristic. Bullying today is different from it was a generation or two or three or four ago. If you want to get to mine. This is what it used to look like in the age of the dinosaurs. It's changed a little bit. In fact, bullies are often popular.
Yes.
Victims may be pretty, popular, etc. And bullying is mainstream. It happens everywhere. It's not hidden. Think about this. When I won't say me, when somebody in their 40s was in school and they decided to slug somebody, there was a school rule. And there were also laws that said, we can't do that, now you're going to be punished. But when 50 kids get on Facebook and they send a message to one student, and that student, that may be vulnerable, 13-year-old, not feeling so good about myself, individual, gets 50 people saying you're ugly, there's no law against that. But it's absolutely bullying. So the face of it has changed in 2011 as opposed to what it was in 1975, 1980. So we don't have the backup, haven't had the backup of you just broke a law because you sent a Facebook comment. Yes? I would love you to tell me that I'm wrong.
Well, towards the Facebook comment,
Yes.
I know you're saying repetition, but like say those 50 people each sent one message.
Yes.
Would they be disciplined as a group acting against the victim? Or since it is the same person only doing it once, would they each be looked at like that, or as a whole group?
That's a great question. It really is. What's that? It really is. It's a very good question, and the answer is yes. Potentially yes. I don't want to say yes categorically, but potentially yes. And the reason is that there's an imbalance of power. Those individual students ganged up, and that's what rebalance is against this one young person.
Okay.
So yes, potentially 50 of them could come down to the auditorium because there's not enough room in the classroom to say, here you go, this is what we have found.
And 50 over a short time, I'd call that a conspiracy.
And multiple times. Is it fair to say multiple times? But it may not be just one event, but it may be over the course, it may be progressive because other kids catch on. Hey, guess what, we're sending you something at 12 o'clock today, and is that pretty accurate? Okay.
Well, can I just add on to that? I think that Twitter is also becoming very, very popular, where it's even faster than Facebook. And so you have one person where you have 300 people following you, and you say one comment, it goes out there, and then they all comment. And so I think that we also have to be aware, instead of going on your Facebook page and taking a look, that that Twitter is becoming a very, very popular way to get your message out. And sometimes it's not being used for good. So and that was one of my questions later on, and that some of the language in here, I want to make sure that it covers things like that.
And we'll talk about this in a little while, but every year we need to review this plan as a component of the plan. As every year we need to train investigators, every year we need to provide staff training, and every year we need to provide supplemental service training. So I'm going to be going out to the bus drivers, to the cafeteria workers, and do separate trainings for them in addition. And each year there are going to be tweaks. I mean, this is a brand new law. and there is essentially no case law around it. So we're going to need to be able to adjust to those things, particularly around cyberbullying and how deeply can you reach into a person's home, into their computer, to be able to gather information that becomes part of an investigation.
Right, and so, I'm so sorry, just one other question.
No, it's fine.
With that, so is this now a policy that would be reviewed by the Policy Review Committee?
It's a great
And
question. At this point, the